Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In the Caribbean, Hurricane Maria strengthened rapidly Monday over the warm waters of the Atlantic, growing from a Category 1 to a Category 5 storm in a single day, threatening Puerto Rico and other islands already suffering from Hurricane Irma's landfall earlier this month. On Monday, the storm's eye passed directly over Dominica, where Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit wrote online, quote, "My roof is gone. I am at the complete mercy of the hurricane. House is flooding." He later said he'd been rescued, but that the island had been devastated. The storm also brought high winds and flooding to Guadeloupe, the staging ground for relief efforts for islands ravaged by Hurricane Irma earlier this month. Hurricane Maria now threatens the capital of Puerto Rico, San Juan, with a possible direct hit as a major hurricane. The storm also prompted hurricane warnings in the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, where residents scrambled to collect debris from massive damage caused by Hurricane Irma. Officials warned shards of metal and glass from the rubble could be turned into deadly projectiles as Hurricane Maria passes. At the United Nations, President Trump's chief economic advisor, Gary Cohn, said Monday the U.S. would withdraw from the landmark 2015 Paris Climate Accord as planned. His comments came as UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said climate should be a top priority at this year's General Assembly.
We see the consequences daily. We count the costs in lives, livelihoods, damaged economies. And since 2008, and you know better than me, some 20 million people a year have been forcibly displaced by floods, storms, fires, and the extreme temperature. But many more are on the move due to the droughts and sea level rise. And climate change is not a distant problem for future generations. It is here, it is now, and we need to deal with it.
The UN Secretary General's call was echoed by French President Emmanuel Macron, who joined President Trump on the sidelines of the General Assembly Monday in a meeting that was cordial despite the pair's disagreement over the Paris Accord. Speaking to reporters alongside Macron, Trump praised a military parade on Bastille Day that he witnessed during his trip to Paris in July.
I was your guest at Bastille Day, and it was one of the greatest parades I've ever seen. It was 2 hours on the button, and it was military might, and I think a tremendous thing for France and for the spirit of France. It was a tremendous thing, and to a large extent, because of what I witnessed, we may do something like that on July 4th in Washington, down Pennsylvania.
President Trump also met Monday with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, claiming there's a good chance for Middle East peace and strongly hinting he's prepared to withdraw the U.S. from the Iran nuclear deal. And Trump also repeated a threat to intervene militarily in Venezuela to oust President Nicolas Maduro, saying the U.S. would take additional steps if necessary. Trump is set to deliver his first address to the UN General Assembly today, where he's expected to single out North Korea and Iran. A last-ditch Senate effort to repeal the Affordable Care Act got a major boost Monday when the Arizona Republican governor, Doug Ducey, said he'd support the legislation. The governor's backing prompted Arizona Republican Senator John McCain to say he would reluctantly vote yes on the Graham-Cassidy health care bill. In July, McCain cast one of 3 Republican votes to narrowly defeat another effort to repeal Obamacare. The Congressional Budget Office won't be able to fully score the bill's impact on the health care system and the U.S. economy by a September 30th deadline, meaning senators could vote on legislation whose full effects are not understood. The Center on Budget and Policy Priorities says the Graham-Cassidy bill would cause many millions of people to lose coverage, gut Medicaid, eliminate or weaken protections for people with pre-existing conditions, and increase out-of-pocket health care costs to individuals, all while showering tax cuts on the wealthiest Americans. A group of 6 young undocumented immigrants sued the Trump administration Monday in a San Francisco federal court, challenging the president's decision to end DACA. The Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, which gives nearly 800,000 undocumented immigrants permission to live and work in the United States. The suit argues the Trump administration failed to follow proper administrative procedures in rescinding DACA and that revoking the program violates due process laws. We'll have more on that later in the broadcast. The lawsuit was filed as undocumented activists and their allies shouted down Democratic House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi during a San Francisco news conference, accusing her of using Dreamers as bargaining chips in a meeting with President Trump last week, in which she sought to win legislation protecting young immigrants in exchange for a more militarized U.S.-Mexico border. The protesters demanded protections not only for Dreamers, but for all 11 million undocumented immigrants living in the United States. After headlines, we'll speak with Congressman Luis Gutierrez and a DACA recipient suing President Trump. CNN is reporting investigators wiretapped Donald Trump's former campaign chair, Paul Manafort, both before and after the 2016 election, including during periods when Manafort spoke by phone with President Trump. CNN reports the FBI sought and won a FISA warrant from a Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act court in 2014 and later got a second warrant that extended at least into early this year. The FBI also reportedly conducted a search of a storage facility belonging to Manafort. He is a key figure in Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into Russia's role in the 2016 U.S. election and whether Trump officials colluded with Russian officials to sway the outcome. In Nigeria, suicide bombers killed 12 people and injured at least 26 others Monday in an attack in the northeastern state of Borno. There was no claim of responsibility, but the area is home to the Boko Haram insurgency and has seen at least 200 people killed since June 1st. India's government asked the country's Supreme Court Monday to allow the deportation of more than 16,000 Rohingya Muslim refugees to Burma, where human rights groups say the government is waging an ethnic cleansing campaign. The threatened deportation came as Human Rights Watch distributed before and after satellite photos it says shows the near total destruction of 214 Rohingya villages in Burma, with tens of thousands of homes burned to the ground. The photos echo the stories of the more than 410,000 Rohingya who fled to refugee camps in Bangladesh.
The military torched our houses. My husband, along with my daughter and her husband, were killed in the clashes. I somehow was able to flee, taking my grandson along with all these villagers.
Back in the United States, the Trump administration's planning to shrink 10 national monuments and open them up to mining, logging, drilling, and other forms of extraction. A leaked memo from Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke shows the plan would cut hundreds of thousands or perhaps millions of acres from protected reserves, including Utah's Bears Ears and Nevada's Gold Butte National Monuments. The plan would also open the Rose Atoll and the Pacific Remote Islands Marine National Monuments to commercial fishing. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is laying the groundwork to open the Alaska National Wildlife Refuge to oil and gas drilling. The Washington Post reports the Interior Department is modifying a 1980s regulation to allow for exploratory drilling and seismic surveys in the nearly 20 million acre reserve. And in Atlanta, Georgia, police officers arrested 3 people on riot charges Monday evening as they clashed with students at Georgia Tech over the police killing of the president of a gay and transgender student group last Sunday. Video of the killing shared online shows officers ordering 21-year-old student Scout Schultz to drop a knife as Schultz refuses to comply, at one point shouting, "Shoot me." After a brief standoff, one of the officers then kills Schultz with a single shot to the heart. Schultz had dialed 911 to report a man with a knife and gun, though Schultz's family says the student was armed only with a small multi-purpose tool and was having a mental health crisis. Schultz was president of the Georgia Tech Pride Alliance and identified as bisexual, non-binary, and intersex. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.